Okay, so let's see. Here is the link, though I presume you probably have this PR up already, or that's linked to the discussion.
Yeah, to the discussion. I don't remember what the original PR number was.
I think it was pretty early. Okay. Here. Hi, Julian. Um, Here's a link to the PR. I mean, I guess, what are your thoughts right off the bat about putting this into Flux?
It's a quality of life feature. It's not something I would see myself ever using personally, but there seems to be some interest and or demand for it. So I'm
Yeah,
not actually sure where I sit with the in isolation. It's a well-developed feature. It's gotten real-world testing. So other than the fact that I personally don't see I personally wouldn't get a lot of value from this. I don't have any objections to having it in Flex itself.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been writing a lot of Flax recently, and um, it has kind of grown on me. Um, yeah, I don't know. I have no objections to including it. I can't see it going wrong in
Hmm.
our case. I think, Compact has its issues in Flax, but I feel like what we're doing here is a much simpler version of what they're trying to do. Um, and so, yeah, I don't really see it having any issues. I mean, maybe with shared parameters, I haven't completely thought through that case yet, but I guess everything that we do with shared parameters is right now based on object ID. So even there, I feel like it would just work.
I didn't even think about that. So I agree about it being simpler and easier to reason about and not having to do the magic that Flex does with the making the declaration, hoisting the declaration out is nice. But you said you've been using, were you using this feat, the Flex experimental compact or the Flex compact or both?
I haven't used the Flux, Julia Flux experimental compact.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I don't really see myself ever using it. Um, because in almost every single case, I can just write out a chain faster than I could write out the forward pass. But yeah, I think um for those people who, for whatever reason, just don't like writing a chain and writing parallel and prefer to just make a struct, I think this is much better than actually making the struct. Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, but what the one I was comparing against was Flax, like Jack's Flax, uh, compact. Um,
Which
which
does require
there
you to make a struct. Yeah.
yeah, it does. And uh, I mean, there I feel like it's like the alternative option using like setup and um call is just so cumbersome that um it seems like a essential feature when I'm writing Jax, but it doesn't really seem that essential to me when I'm writing Flux. I mean, my only
Makes sense.
other concern with this stuff is that if and when functors becomes automatically opt-in, this entire thing will be um, just a let block.
That's true.
I mean, even now, it you could probably do it with like I think we functorized base.fix1, right? Um,
Yes. Yes, we do.
and like I recall, like I was going over the original discussion about all of this, and um, that was one of your points is that you can actually do this with base.fix1. I mean, I guess the only thing is this also gives us pretty printing,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah, I think there were a lot of niceties like this that eventually pushed it over the line, which is why we have it now. The pretty printing, there was another couple of things I can think of. The being able to give it a name, I think, which does fit into there as well.
yeah.
Being able to reference the variables by name inside the compact block. So it's almost a little bit of a with statement in that regard. My concern, if
I mean,
any, sorry, go ahead.
well, even with the let's say like okay, base fix one, you couldn't necessarily give it a name, but with the let block, the thing you're returning is a function. You could give that function a name. Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that with the let block, it's kind of you get the way to specify parameters or submodules. You and then you get all of Julia's full power for how you want to do that. Let's say you want to have um one of those things be a generator or something weird. You can use any kind of weird syntax you want. When you give the name, you just name the function that you return to be like my model one or whatever you want to call it. Um, and um, maybe that's like a little bit cleaner than having like a specialized keyword in this macro that has a different meaning than all the other keywords. So yeah,
That's true. I
I mean
think
the only thing. Okay, go
if
ahead.
you assign it to if you assign the result of a let block to some alias, though, when it prints, it doesn't keep that name you've assigned it to. I think that was one of the things that this has, which is the name prints out when you print the actual model.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess your the let block would only let you really name that particular instance. Um, but here we're actually creating like a something that looks like a new type with a name.
yeah, even though I think it is a singleton, but it effectively it behaves like one, a new type.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't see any reason not to include it. So I would say let's just go ahead and include it in Flux.
Mhm. My
The
only
only
worry would be what is the maintenance cost of this? It's not large. It's I think everything up to the actual backing layer is very straightforward. The macro definition is uh, a little long, but it's not too bad. The show definitions are definitely where most of the complexity is, I think. And I'm not too familiar with how easy or difficult they would be to maintain over time. That would be my only concern with having it in Flux proper is that uh like it's kind of like you own it, you fix it kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know with Flux Experimental, it was like the writers would take on some maintenance burden, but in practice, it basically means we're still maintaining it,
Yes.
um, but with just like a softer guarantee on how quickly we're willing to fix something.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, the show code is definitely very complex, but it's not something that's like technically complex. It's just a lot of code. Like it would just be time consuming possibly to tweak it if we need to.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, it's also
You
the kind of code that if someone complained like I made a struct my own struct and then I used it in this compact thing and now it prints all weird. Um, it's like the kind of thing that someone like it's just string manipulation. Someone could make their own PR to this code pretty easily. So it's like a low hanging fruit in terms of contributor maintenance.
That's true. The parts that will break are unlikely to affect the results of people's code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, I guess we can just include it and then we can have like a suggestion that this is good for like quick custom, forward pass definitions. But, if you have a very complicated layer that you're trying to create, we recommend that you just manually create the struct yourself and
Yep.
don't try to do anything complicated here.
Hmm.
Okay.
And we can mention that as part of the PR that will add this to Flex, um, having that docs component in place. And I guess we should probably also ask Miles if he is willing to help with the maintenance of this. I don't think we've had any PRs against this, which is a little strange to me. I would have expected at least we had one from Claire to fix the macro itself, but other than that, I'm surprised, like given apparently that this has gotten some interest, that there have been no issues or PRs filed against it. Maybe it's just that robust, but at least my experience with other Flex features is that the more they're used, the more things we hear about them.
Yeah. I mean, that might also be just because it's in flux experimental, which is, I think, Miles's point.
Perhaps, yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, we can ask him if he's willing to do the initial PR and also help a little bit with the maintenance. He's, active with all of the symbolic regression stuff in Julia and
That's
Python.
true.
So he's more than he's like active and able to do that kind of work if he's willing.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'll make a note of that. Okay. Well, there's nothing else on the agenda, but I don't know if you wanted to discuss any of the distributed training or memory management stuff, Julian.
I don't really have I'm kind of busy getting ready for JuliaCon, so I haven't had a chance to work on that. I know Brian did some stuff there, I think last weekend. Um but yeah, I think I'll probably be targeting working on that more for like the hackathon or afterwards.
Okay. Um, yeah, Brian, you'll be on vacation during JuliaCon and the hackathon.
Yes. So
Okay.
I don't know if there's any way to tune into that during, but I will not be available. And
Yeah.
I did not do anything after what I mentioned on Zulip. Just haven't had the time. So if you would like to hear more about what I did, I'm happy to share that. But really, it's, I think, I would have had to come up with some algorithm to determine liveness, no matter how clumsy that would have been. So I'm sure doing it properly would be easier at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not attending JuliaCon in person. Um, and uh yeah, mostly because I might be busy during that time period. But based on availability, I can try to tune in for the hackathon. Like if that's what you're going to be working on. Um, definitely, at least for the liveness project, I don't know how much I can help with like an algorithm to determine liveness, but I can certainly help with all the tracing part around it. Though it seems like that is probably kind of as I expected, pretty easy to do.
Surprisingly
Uh,
so, yeah.
yeah. I mean, the only difficult part of that was defining what is a primitive, but um, I guess like gradient AD primitives are already like a pretty good set to start off of.
Yep. I'm surprised
Um,
it was a one-liner, which is very pleasant. Yeah.
yeah, no, Ghost and Umlaut are both really nice packages.
Mhm. I did have a
Um,
question for Julian about the hackathon. My understanding was it was more of an in-person bunch of people are around a table kind of thing. So there's no way to link in remotely to that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I did one in person was in Baltimore, and people just showed up into a room, and I don't even think there was an announcement. People kind of just started working on stuff at tables. Um, I mean, I could probably just conference you in over Zoom. Um, so if you wanted to do that, we could do that. I haven't committed to what I'm actually gonna do at the hackathon. It's possible something comes up during JuliaCon, but if not, I'd definitely be down to work on this.
Okay. I have no idea when the hackathon is. It may be at a time where I'm literally not online. So we can start talking on Zulip, and if something comes up where we're all present online, then we can think about something sync then.
Sure.
yeah,
It's on the 29th, that Saturday, and it starts whenever people show up. Um, I'll have to cut off early anyway. I'll have to catch a flight probably around 1 or 2. So,
Mhm.
and that's Eastern time.
um, yeah. I mean, even if we can't, or at least I can't be there like 100% of the time. If you do decide to work on this and you want to send the occasional ping to Zulip, um, and I'm online, then we can synchronize basically through Zulip and GitHub. somehow.
Yeah, even if it's
Um,
a private repo.
yeah.
Happy to look at that as well.
Um, yeah, and I mean, I guess we could always, if there's no reason that it has to be constrained to the hackathon. I guess one thing, if it would be helpful, is we can just start the private repo. I mean, it costs nothing to create it. And then if Brian or I have the time, we can already seed it with some of that tracing stuff. And like a example test case of a program. And then maybe that'll like make it easier during the hackathon to jumpstart coding. I mean, and I guess related to all this is I had promised a script for all the data parallel training, which I haven't really worked on until today before this meeting. And it's actually a pretty short script, but I'll post it on after the meeting on a gist and send you the link, and that'll be, I think, like a good example of just like the canonical program that we want to convert to distributed training.
Mm-hmm. I can try to do the same with what I have, which is, in short, an attempt to try to make the early finalization work, but in practice, because the only in order to make it safe, I had to use a very conservative heuristic, just ends up freeing all the arrays at the end. But maybe just seeing that tracing part and seeing some of the intent with detecting when it's safe to insert a finalizer with no help from the compiler, because the compiler is very escape analysis, as we talked about, is not very helpful here. Maybe that would be a good jumping off point, or at least be some inspiration for doing something more robust and more functional later. And I can throw that on a gist as well.
That sounds great. And also, we may not, I mean, we don't necessarily need a full, we may be able to avoid a full scale liveness analysis, like maybe just a reduced layer by layer liveness analysis. Well, no, right, because you said there's operations that are like multiple operations within a layer. But we can, I mean, we can see if there's like a reduced approach we could take, and maybe give it some help with annotations and stuff. But yeah, anyway, it just
At
makes
least in
sense.
this context, there are no layers anymore because we've traced out the tape. So I don't know if that makes it easier or harder, but that's how it looks. It's just a bunch of function calls.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
The tricky part is really broadcasting, because that wraps arrays in types so that they are like they kind of escape almost into the broadcasted object. So you have to figure out when the broadcasted objects are no longer live, and the broadcasted objects can get wrapped into other broadcasted. It's a little bit of a nesting doll. Yeah.
I do have some logic, so maybe we should just create the private repo and have an example with these kinds of things in the code that we're tracing. Because I do have some logic that kind of unrolls that like recursively broadcasted thing, or like tracks it in a data structure. And I don't know if that'll be helpful, but you know, yeah, I mean, I could see it being helpful if you're at a certain point and you're trying to make a determination about a particular variable, to be able to reference that data structure if it's something that is like a broadcasted term.
Well, yeah, that sounds great to me. Yeah, and if I get a chance, I'll try to look at it before JuliaCon. But probably not more than just glancing at the code.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever time.
Relatedly, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say whatever time you have.
Yeah. One thing I will try to put together, I haven't put together my talks yet, which is why I'm also kind of busy. But it's my hope that I have two talks, one at the mini symposium and the other at the HPC mini symposium, which thankfully should not be at exactly the same time, I hope. And they're both on Dagger, and my hope is that I can also present on how one would use Dagger to do like a machine learning workflow, either with or maybe not with MPI, but doing some data parallelism there. That's kind of like planned for me to put together, just kind of using some of the features that are already available in Dagger. So we might get some interest from that, in people wanting to do distributed training.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, well, I guess if there's nothing else, good luck with your JuliaCon prep, and we can end the meeting early.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.